Well, last autumn I was talking about all the theory related to deciding whether I should go for a heat pump or not. I got a quote, but now it's the end of February. So here we have our two suppliers. We've got Derek Scott Plumbing and Heating. I've known them for 14 years. They fitted my last boiler. And we've got a new supplier, Clancool. They do all of the heat pump and refrigeration work. So let's finally turn all this theory into practice.
So first things first, out with the thermostat, the hot water cylinder, and the boiler, of course. The other thing we do is expose all of the floor hatches which give underfloor access to all the pipework going to each of the radiators so that they can be replaced easily too. Floors are protected throughout the thoroughfares, and at the same time we've also got the new equipment being unloaded, in this case the compressor and the main hydro box unit. We'll talk about that in quite a lot more detail coming up.
Okay, so they've been in the site for just about an hour. We've got hot water pipes, hot water tank is draining, new supplies. I think this is the insulation for the refrigerant pipe work, so that is, I think, the return line. Much smaller diameter for the flow on your refrigerant here. This is the new hydro box. This is the combined hot water tank and heat exchanger for the refrigerant to heating medium. If we go around here, go in here, everything's laid down in terms of floor protection. That's the old hot water tank, expansion tank, and yep, slowly draining that out. And we've got the old boiler being disconnected from the electrics. So the rest of the house is quite busy. Lots of work going on here. Floor hatch is opened up. We go in here. Have we got anybody in here?
I think we do. Yes, we do. We've got somebody in there.
So this is the new unit. It's not what was originally quoted. They came up with a new quote. We'll talk about this in a bit more detail. This is a split refrigerant system. So instead of taking your heating medium glycol hot water mix outside the house, all you have to do is take refrigerant out. So we've got flow and return refrigerant lines here, and because they don't freeze, you don't need to add glycol into the rest of the heating medium system. So we've got this, this is the inlet, I suppose. This is quite a fine mesh. This is quite a fine mesh item here. The other thing we're doing is elevating the heat pump above the ground. So this is really to keep the heat pump clear of the snow. As you've seen in my previous videos, there's been plenty of snow. So the original proposed location was actually on a sunnier location over here, but I pointed out that when it's snowing, all the snow comes off these solar panels, and that was definitely the case last January when we had about 15 to 20 centimeters of snow. This is a much better location simply because, yes, it's a bit more shaded, but there's no snow to come off the roof here, so that's great. So what you can see here, you got very fine heat exchange fins here, but you can also see these lines here. This is the condenser coil here. I think it's evaporator coil when it comes to heating. So this is where your refrigerant will pass through, collecting all the heat and transferring that into your refrigerant. So I won't be seeing this. This will be up against the wall. There'll be I think a 30 centimetre clearance with the wall there. Well, here is all the pipework which exists underneath my boiler. And one of the thoughts I've been having is that once this boiler has been dismantled and the pipework removed, this space here could well be a candidate for having a server rack battery installed in my house in the future. But as you can see, we've got quite a lot of equipment underneath the boiler worktop. This is the magnetic filter. That's used for keeping any iron oxide sludge under control before it goes into the return line, before it goes into the boiler. And then on the flow line here, we've got what's known as a deaerator. This is used for removing all the microbubbles from the heating medium. And in removing the microbubbles, you reduce the rate of corrosion of the steel radiators from the inside. So this was fitted about 7 years after the boiler was fitted, and it has been remarkable in terms of reducing the amount of work that the magnetic filter has had to do since then. Easier to rip out than it is to put in. So this looks like a refrigerant line here, and then we've got the isolator switch for the cabinet. So then I guess the hydro box just gets, that's the flex, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. And then in here, is that for the compressor unit?
Yeah, your new fuse box will be on there.
Okay, so that's where the new fuse box is going. So one's going to the compressor unit, one's going to the hydro box. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. Oh, very good. So, just need to wait for more bits and pieces.
And then the other isolators obviously let the
outside. Okay, all right. I'll just take a look at that later on. So now we've got the isolator unit on the outside for the heat pump, and then there's also a conduit for the refrigerant lines, I guess. Okay, so here we have the main hydro box, and not too much to see except for the fact we've got 6 connections at the top. So central heating, hot water and cold water inlet, refrigerant. And here we've got a overpressure. Whereabouts does your, whereabouts are the cables? Oh, there's the cable, right on the top there. So I'm standing at it, quite a bit bigger than the old cylinder. So this is the final mounting position for the heat pump. And we're just getting the refrigerant line connected up. I think this is the flow line. So very thin pipe on the way out and a slightly fatter pipe on the way back in.
Okay, so let's have a sit rep. So radiators are now off in all the rooms except for a couple of rooms where the radiators remain on. Insulation pipework. Lots of copper pipework here. Heat pump is now installed, and the pipework here coming along. So the one which is going into the ground, that is the cold water feed. There's a flexible plastic pipe connecting it to the main system. That's just temporary. That's the main inlet valve. There's a packing nut which is leaking. So that needs to be replaced. I think it's looking like a nice tidy job in here. So let's go through to the outside. So here's the heat pump. It's not too big at all. And we've got this enclosure here. You can see we've got the cabling. We've got some sealant around, expanding foam around the penetration into the wall. So we should be ready to start again very, very soon. And most importantly, before I've even started my breakfast, is get the fire going. It's not that cold overnight, but it's the door's going to be remaining open all day long, so it's good to just get a little bit more heat into the house. Okay, so here we have all the pipework made for the heat pump, expansion vessel for central heating, expansion vessel for hot water. This is your hot water supply. So you've got a pressure reducing valve, an overpressure relief pipe, which is a small bore pipe. That is the inlet into here. And then you've got the pipe connected to the expansion vessel. Then we've got the hot water pipe, the cold water pipe inlet and the hot water pipe outlet. And then we've got the central heating flow and return here. One thing about the flow and return is the flow side. That is a deaerator, so that removes all the micro bubbles. And then on the return side, we've got this. This is a magnetic filter, and that will collect any iron oxide particles. We've got these things called ton dishes, and they are used as a quick visual reference to see whether there's any overflow from the hot water tank because of expansion tank issues. We've got pressure gauge, and then we've got a filling loop from the cold water supply. And we have got this bypass valve as well. Now, interestingly, on the return leg, right at the bottom, we've got this thing that's called a buffer tank. So this is a 20-litre tank, and the whole point of this is to balance out your flow rates, steady them out. So, just taking a step back, that is the Daikin hydro box. So inside here, we've got a heat exchanger for the refrigerant, and we have got a hot water tank, 230 litres. So now that we've talked about what's outside the heat pump, I think it's also worth discussing in a bit of detail what's inside this hydro box that we're talking about. So what we have here is a piping and instrumentation diagram, P&ID, although they don't mention instrumentation in the title here, but in my line of work we call these P&IDs. What we have on the right hand side is the refrigerant loop. So we've got the inlet, and then we have the outlet here. We have a pressure sensor for the refrigerant loop, and then on the left side of this heat exchanger we have got the central heating loop, which is basically your water mix. In some models, the previous one I had described in my previous video, I had a quote for a heating loop which went all the way out to the outdoor unit. But here we've got refrigerant, which is going into the outdoor unit. So we don't have issues with needing to have glycol in the heating loop. So on the left side of the heat exchanger, we have got a backup heater here, and we also have a circulation pump here. We have got thermistors for your flow, and we've got thermistors for your return, and then we've got another thermistor for the flow out of the backup heater, and then we've got a freeway valve. So this valve will send heating medium out to the central heating circuit, your radiators, or it will send it into this heating coil for the built-in hot water cylinder. You'll also note we've got thermistors for the top and the bottom of the hot water cylinder, and we have got the cold water inlet and hot water outlet. What you'll also notice is that we have got an expansion valve down here. So this is in addition to the expansion tanks that we've got outside the unit. There's also a magnetic filter which is in addition to the outside unit. So I do not know what basis the plumbers have for requiring an extra expansion tank in addition to this one, but I suspect they've done their calculations and they figured out that this expansion tank is probably insufficiently sized for the job. So this is the piping diagram, and in terms of the electrics, it's relatively straightforward, but this looks more complicated than it actually is. A lot of these connections here are optional. So we'll start at the top. So we've got a normal power supply here, which goes to the outdoor unit. And then we also have a normal power supply for the indoor unit. But in addition, we have a backup heater power supply. Now, those people who took note of my previous section of the video will note there were only 2 circuit breakers. So my reckoning is that they have looped across from the backup heater power supply into the normal power supply for the indoor unit. Whether that's the right way to do it or not, I'm not too sure. But in terms of the other connections, there's one other connection which is of use, and that is the connection to the remote control unit. I think you've got transmit and receive serial data bus on this. So that's what we have for the wired room thermostat. Everything else here is ancillary equipment, which is not included in my installation. So here's the electrics. It's a new board which is coming in. There's an electricity meter just for the heat pump. Unique feature about heat pumps, they've got a type F RCD right there. So we have got 2 breakers here. I think there's going to be another breaker somewhere else. I'm not too sure where, but 2 breakers. I think one for the indoor unit, one for the outdoor unit. And then there's 2 more spares for future expansion. So here we are. Plumber is removing all the items, or many of the items, underneath the floors. So we've got the old port valves, we've got insulation, lots of insulation. He's been chopping them up, all the pipes, so he can take them out in buckets. And yes, so the next stage after this will be hanging the radiators up and dropping the tails into the floor. So this is the second radiator being fitted. So this is the second radiator being fitted, brackets mounted, ready to hang the radiators up. So if we look at the general schematic of where things are going, we're going to have 28mm pipework coming underneath the floors here, down here, and then we will have the first radiator here teed off, and there'll also be radiators teed off here, beyond which it goes down to 22mm, and then we have the radiator in the bedroom, which will be teed off on 15mm, and then we've got this radiator here, and then finally this radiator here, which will also be 15mm. So general rule of thumb, according to my plumber, is no more than 1 radiator on 15mm, and when you have 2 radiators or more joined together, then it's 22 millimeters, and then you've got 28 millimeters for your final trunk back to the heat pump. So this is an example of my study radiator being hung. So typically these are about twice as thick, so 2 panels thick with extra deep fins, and the surface area of the panels is bigger. So all told, I think we're talking about 3 times the radiator heat emission compared to the old radiators. This is what my plumbers are having to dive into in order to crawl about doing all the pipe work. So as you can see, it's about 1.5 blocks deep, so not too deep at all, so it's a very claustrophobic environment. Okay, so now all the radiator tails are connected into the underfloor region for the bedrooms, so I think they are just going to be working on the top sections. So we've got plenty of insulation. This stuff is the thicker pipe work, so that's 15 millimeter pipe work. I think that's 22, and there it all goes. And then upstairs in the hall, in the cupboard, it's thinner 13 millimeter thick insulation for the pipe work. Okay, one of the things you probably can see here is lots of dust. One of the features about crawling underneath the floors is you do kick up a lot of dust, and it does come into the rooms. So something to be mindful, especially this kind of loose material underneath the floors, is it definitely kicks up. So one thing we need to talk about, the gas tank, that needs to be removed. So I have got 50% gas, and I've informed the owner of the gas tank, which is a local company, to that it's been disconnected, and they've just come along and they have said that they will empty the gas from the tank first before they remove it. I don't get any refund for unused gas, so it is 50% gas used. The last time this was filled up to 80%, that was back in January last year, so it's lasted me 14 months to get from 80% to 50%, which is quite impressive, especially this winter, considering I haven't been using any wood burning in order to try and run this down as far as possible. So you're probably asking the question, why don't I get my heat pump installed next winter instead? And well, the answer to that question is going to be the grant for the heat pump may not be available at £9,000 next winter. So take advantage of the grants when they're available. Yes, I have to forfeit half of the gas tank, which is probably worth, in this instance, I don't know, 800 quid, I guess. £1,600 for a full tank of gas, 800 quid for half a tank. So the grant may only be worth £6,000 next year. Who knows? But what I do know is that it's going to be quite a bit of effort to remove the earth before they can lift this gas tank out. The gas tank lifting is their responsibility, but the earth removal, that's my responsibility. So I might just get my local builder to do a bit of earth shifting for that one. But other than that, the progress is continuing. Well, it's now been 4 days. This is day number 4. They're very busy, and I have to leave them. I am now going to be away on assignment in Germany. My work has decided that I've been without a shower for that length of time, so they're sending me to Germany so I can have a nice hot shower and get clean again. It has been one of those jobs over a sink for the last 3 nights, and it's not 100% in terms of its enjoyment or thoroughness, shall we say. So I will
it's also a bit of a shame. I was wanting to see the commissioning taking place. That's probably going to happen tomorrow. But I will check back in Germany and see what the status is. Well, the status is that later that evening I arrived in Germany and I got my nice hot shower. So nice and fresh again. But the more interesting thing is that one day later, that's when the heat pump was finally switched on. Hooray! Let's go into my studio and let's talk about that in a bit more detail.
So here is the exciting day where it all happened, and it all started happening at 1:15. And this was quite a eureka moment for me, just watching this remotely in Germany, seeing 4.6 kilowatts. I was just thinking, whoopee, we've got the heat pump running. And my very next thought was, oh my goodness, that's a big demand. And this happened on the day, the best producing day for solar electricity of the year so far, 21.28 kilowatts from my solar panels. So we were supposedly very well equipped to deal with this heat pump demand. Next time the heat pump started was just before 3 o'clock, again with a big heavy demand. I'm wondering whether the backup heater was kicking in at this stage, but you could see the output was steadying out somewhat, and then it was ramping up again towards the evening time. The outcome of this is that it drained the battery all the way from 100% down to 0 by 8 o'clock in the evening. So there was 3.5 hours of heat pump operation on expensive electricity rates before we got to 11:30 at night. You can see there's a lot of variability here. One other thing I want to just point out is that the overnight temperatures at a nearby weather station, it dropped down to nearly 4 degrees, -4 degrees. So it was a good exercise in which to run the heat pump. So the question is how did the heat pump do in terms of temperatures in the house? Well, we need to get some monitoring for temperatures, and what do we have here? We've got an API here for the Solar Edge system, which I have, and the battery itself has got an internal temperature. So we can save this as an XML file and open it in Excel. You get this, and we just want the timestamp and internal temperature, and we get this graph. And you can see at lunchtime yesterday, temperature in the house was about 11.5 degrees. We had some big rises up when the battery was discharging, and then it was regressing back to room temperature. And again, it was charging up here just after midnight before regressing back to room temperature once it was fully charged. At this point, you can see we were already at about 20 degrees. So it took maybe 14 hours to get from 10 degrees, 11.5 degrees up to 14 degrees. So heat pumps are slower, but it was able to do this in spite of the temperature outside being -4 degrees. Now, in terms of that variability, there's another, there isn't too much information here, but if you go on to My Energy, this has got a 5-minute resolution, so you get much stronger. You can see these troughs here. It's that the heat pump's turning off every 30 minutes, roughly speaking, and I don't think that's a defrost cycle. My expectation of heat pumps is that they should just simply run continuously, with the exception of defrosting. And what we're seeing here is a quite regular defrosting, quite regular cycling going on. I think this is a matter of tuning, particularly the output of the heat pump versus the flow temperature. I've got a feeling the flow temperature is probably overshooting by a large margin, and then it gets to a high threshold where it's just commanded to shut down the heat pump until the flow temperature drops down again. But as you can see, during the middle of the day, the output was fairly regular before disappearing altogether for 3.5 hours. And that got me a bit concerned. So I messaged the heat pump people. They said they'll be out on Monday. I thought the whole thing had just given up the ghost, but then it sprang back to life again. But as you can see, the second evening coming up, we're draining the battery again at an accelerating rate. So by 8 o'clock again today, we're going to be running out. So there is much still to discover about this system, and one of the things which I am very keen on doing when we get back home is optimizing the heat pump so that we can run a lot more efficiently. But nonetheless, it's only 3 hours of the day where the heat pump is on an inexpensive electricity rate. The rest of the time it's on solar power or it's on the cheap overnight rate.
So the other feature about heat pumps is the disruption. I had all of my floor hatches open. It was absolutely fine for me. But if you have a much busier household, that level of disruption could be too much to cope with. One of the things I will say though is that the overall level of disruption in the bedrooms in particular was only limited to 2 days. And I'm sure the plumbers would be able to manage that disruption so that it wasn't your entire house that was being overwhelmed by work all the time. The next question is, well, where am I? Well, I am in Gluckstadt in Germany. It's in the northwest of Germany on the banks of the River Elbe. And I've been on assignment here on and off for about 6 months. And I'm working locally in the vicinity of Gluckstadt. So that's it for this video. All I'm going to say is to be continued. I'd like to thank you all for watching, and I'll talk to you again very soon.